Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Political. My name's Connor Allen, and I'm here with Ryan Smith.
Hello, everyone.
And today we've got a great episode for you, because what we have here is the news we've all been waiting for. We all knew it in our hearts. We all knew that it was coming, but now it started to happen. The establishment figures, in this case, Kim Darroch, the former ambassador to the UK, has admitted that the polling is once again wrong. That Trump and Biden are very close indeed, if not Trump ahead slightly. I'm going to be talking about a few other things too. But first of all, before we do get into this episode, guys, please do, if you like this content, if you want to help support us, please do subscribe and like. And also, please do consider leaving a comment. We do want to hear your opinions. We do want to hear what you have to say. We want to build a community. So do please get involved. So moving on onto the article, the US feels very volatile. Former ambassador warns of election violence. We start off with the violence, Ryan. You think there's any likelihood of electoral violence?
Yeah, I think almost definitely at this point, it would seem. You've got on the left with the Democrats, you have Hillary Clinton saying to Biden, do not concede under any circumstance. You have, obviously, the Democrats, Biden and Harris, talking about how Trump is trying to steal the election, how he's trying to rig the election.
Putting the pieces in place, aren't they? When it all goes disastrously for them, putting the pieces in place to delegitimize.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that Trump has got people so concerned about mail-in voting as well that, God forbid, should he lose, which seems unlikely at this moment, from my professional opinion, then people are going to possibly, on the right, be very concerned about that and think that it may be because of mail-in fraud or voting fraud. So yeah. I think regardless of the result, unless it's, significant landslide territory, I think there will be some element of violence. But I do think that the left is to blame for appeasing violence for so long now on their side, all during Trump's 4 years, that those on the right, who obviously have had nothing really to protest over, because they're quite happy with the direction the country is going in, obviously they set the precedent for those people, for some particularly unhinged people on the right, to react in such a violent way as well.
This is who Kim Darroch points to, doesn't he? Because he says here in the article, he points to he doesn't mention violence that's been going on in Democrat-run cities since the Black Lives Matter movement. He doesn't mention that at all, but he does point to the, quote, police shooting of unarmed Black Americans, the case of Kyle Rittenhouse, who is now a fervent police supporter facing homicide charges after a shooting incident. He's not... there is no balance in this article. In case you don't know, The Guardian is a very left-wing newspaper in the UK. So if you think that Kyle Rittenhouse is a kid who went out to defend his property, well, that's your point of view, but this newspaper obviously doesn't agree. So why do you think he's pointing only to these people on the right, these very few isolated incidents of violence coming from the right? And why do you think he's deciding to ignore the left?
Well, I would imagine
he has an agenda or something, no?
I don't know if I think it may actually just be ignorance on his part more than anything. He's probably caught in the same bubble that those on the left find themselves in, and he is possibly completely unaware of all the violence and the protests that are happening in obviously Portland, and have been happening in Seattle as well. But obviously Portland more so seems to be the poster boy for violence right now. So it may just be that he is ignorant of what's going on. Maybe he's eaten up all of the fake news left media, and he genuinely believes that these are 90% it was peaceful protests that came out in a report. And on his part, he's seen obviously Kyle Rittenhouse, who a guy who's facing charges for I think he's got maybe like 2 counts of first-degree murder. I mean, just a whole host of charges. Personally, just based upon the evidence from the videos, I think Kyle, you know, there's a real chance that he will be acquitted and it will be deemed that he was acting in self-defense. So to call this, I don't know, far-right extremism or white supremacy or whatever it is, it just seems absolutely ludicrous, because it's not a cut and dry case by any means. And it, you know, certainly you can make a good case to say that Kyle was just there to help defend property and obviously got caught up in a bad situation and had to defend himself. So I think, you know, it's just another example of obviously the left ignoring all the violence coming from one side, and trying to amplify the violence or incidents coming from the other side and create this bias and this narrative that obviously it's just the far right and not the far left.
And we do know that they do this, and we've seen it consistently throughout all the left-leaning outlets. They do try to emphasize one side of their story, their own, and they try to kind of paint over their own side's ignorance. I actually think the ambassador here, Kim Darroch, is a victim of the violence, because if you were an ambassador, you'd be criticizing Black Lives Matter for creating a prospect of electoral violence right now. I wouldn't be. Hell no. You wouldn't catch me making any comments in public about that. And this just kind of illustrates the atmosphere that the left has created in America today, where you've got professionals who are criticizing violence. They're not pointing to the violence on the streets and the rioting and the looting and the burning.
Yeah.
Seems a bit bizarre to me.
Oh, certainly. Well, it obviously it's just quite typical, obviously, and it would destroy the narrative if they did so. But as we talked about before, anyone with 2 eyes, and you know, I'm not being discriminatory towards blind people there, but anyone with 2 eyes can see for themselves the violence that's going on. And it doesn't matter really, I don't think, for the average swing voter, the average, you know, moderate, I say moderate, like the average sane person, right or left, can quite clearly see that for themselves. I feel like we're digressing a little bit, though. What else does Mr. Darroch have to say?
He's come out, he said, I'm not sure the posters really know how to count Trump voters, he said. So he's obviously alluding to the fact here that posters consistently underreport the numbers of likely Trump voters. They did it in 2016 with hilarious consequences, and they're doing so again here. Why do you think these voters have been reported? You quite like polls, don't you? You quite like getting into it, and you quite like this sort of thing.
I absolutely love the statistical analysis. I think there's a few indicators to me in the polling itself that show that Trump's vote is being underreported. But I think why are people concerned? It's because of the cancel culture of the left. They don't, you know, we're not just talking about you know, someone sat at home or whatever, not wanting to talk to a pollster or whatever. We're talking about say husband and wife, right? Absolutely. And one of them saying to their spouse, "Oh yeah, you know, Biden, you know, woohoo, yeah, we really want that guy in." But obviously, when they're in the ballot box and their vote is anonymous, yeah, exactly. So
and this is a effect that you see the world over. Conservatives are consistently underrepresented in polling because they're seen as, you know, the quote unquote nasty party. And this has really been dialed up 1,000 times. Like you said, it's the cancel culture, because it's not the case anymore that if someone were to say they were voting Republican, and, you know, their friends, you know, might give them a telling off, or they might give them a bit of a hard time, or, you know, so they might have an argument or something. That ends friendships now. If you disagree with a far left radical, then you're out of their lives. They might even try to do something more. It happens to me. Okay, people message me. They listen to the great content that we put out, and they message me and they say, Connor, you're a far right extremist now. Crazy! It's not jobs.
Yeah.
But of course, that's going to translate into the polling.
Exactly, 100%. We see it. We see it all over the world. In the UK with the shy Tory vote, every single exit poll has underrepresented the Tory vote. In every general election, I think bar one since maybe like 1980 or something, or the 1980s. It's not a new occurrence just with Trump, but it is amplified by Trump because, the left has basically gained a monopoly on morality, and anyone who disagrees with them, they truly believe there must be some, evil motive there underlining their decision making, whether it's greed or whatever. Greed's usually the first one that they allude to.
The first one's normally racism, isn't it?
Well, it used to be greed, now it's racism. But in the UK, it's more greed. In the US, I feel like it's become racism. It seems to be, the
buzzword.
Yeah, the buzzword. But yeah, when it comes to the polling, what do I think are good indicators to say that Trump possibly is doing well? One is that generally pollsters will show approval ratings higher than the support that Trump actually has in terms of people who say they're going to vote for him. So that's people who are sort of willing to admit that they think he may have done a good job, which maybe they might be able to rationalize to someone else. Oh yeah, well, he's doing a good job with this or that. But to admit that they're going to vote for him is a whole nother thing. The other thing is that the Republicans in general have higher support than Trump does when it comes to polls as well.
That's quite a critical thing, because there are a number of kind of swing Republicans this election out there. People who perhaps would support Mitt Romney or John McCainites, this type of people. And it's all very well and good 2 months before an election saying that Trump has completely lost them, and when they go to the ballot box, they're going to lend their vote to the Democrats. That's completely one thing. But then when you're actually there in the ballot box and you don't like Joe Biden, and you don't like Kamala Harris, and that's super important, right? Because those people are never going to win over, a staunch Romneyite or a staunch McCainite. And you have to bring yourself to put a next in the box? I don't think so.
Here's the thing, a lot of people convince them, I genuinely believe a lot of people convince themselves that they're going to vote for a particular candidate, but when they get into the ballot box and they're faced with that decision, there's a certain power that comes with voting anonymously, right? Because no one will know but you what you've done, who you voted for. You can tell your family, whoever, that you voted for a particular person from a particular party, but when you get into the ballot box, no one knows but you who it is that you're voting for. And I just think there are a lot of people who, maybe convince themselves, oh yeah, well, we've got to vote for Biden because, Trump is this and Trump is that. But then when they get there and they go, yeah, but he's so good for the economy, and I care about my livelihood, and I care about my job, and I care about the future for my children and their livelihood. And are they going to grow up in an economy that's booming where there's plenty of jobs, or am I going to take a gamble on Joe Biden, based upon his record and based upon these rather radical ideas that he has when it comes to taxes and progressive leftist policies and this kind of thing? And that's why that's why if you go too far left, people will not vote for you, because there's too much of a risk to take a gamble that their policy is going to work out, because it might not.
I think that's really important, the word you use there, gamble and risk, because you need, basically any gambler, if you're in a casino, you don't bet on a 50-50, do you? Or maybe you do, but it's probably not the best for you. You need to have some sort of belief, whether you've done the maths or whatever, that odds are in your favour of winning a certain hand or whatever. It's the same in the polling station. because unless you have a really strong sentiment, you're going to vote the way you always have done. You're going to vote for your natural instincts, because a lot of the decision making when you vote for someone, it's natural instincts. I'm a natural conservative, or you're a natural liberal, and so those candidates are very clear cut. So unless you have a big personal grudge against Donald Trump or something for something he's done, you get to that ballot box. You have to be pushed outside of your instinct. That's a bit kind of pseudosciencey and a bit
No,
too far into
you
my...
are right, because when just quick, to just throw a quick example of this, possibly the biggest criticism that people have against Donald Trump is the US's handling of the coronavirus. Now, whether or not we agree with his handling of the coronavirus doesn't really matter, because I think it is quite clear from the data that people don't think that it's been handled too well. Maybe some part of that is to do with it being on federal level, and obviously in some states like New York, I'm sure people who are living in New York, think an awful job has been done. How much of that they lay on the federal government and how much that they lay on the state government is another question. But coronavirus, when you go into the ballot box, are you thinking to yourself, oh, well, Trump's done a terrible job on the coronavirus, so when there's another pandemic, I'm not sure, because these are once in a generation type things, if that. I just think the record that Trump has when it comes to the economy and creating jobs and building manufacturing back to America is going to appeal to people far more than the negative scare tactics that you see from the Democrats when it comes to things like, oh, well, the coronavirus and this and that, because people are like, well, yeah, maybe things could have gone better, maybe they couldn't have, I don't know, but ultimately there's probably not going to be any more pandemics anytime soon, and I think by then as well, people will start thinking that a vaccine is on the horizon anyway, so they're going to vote in what they consider their best interest, which is going to be the economy. It always will be. That will always be the case.
I'm glad you've mentioned the coronavirus and these kind of risky times, because it leads us nicely into our next topic. Because we've only looked at we looked at the electoral violence from a perspective of the left, the usual suspects causing trouble on the left. But picture this on election night. Let's face it, there's going to be more people voting by mail this year. Most of them will be Democrat, because if you're worried about the coronavirus, you're more likely to vote by mail. That's just
certainly,
a fact, okay? So what about this scenario on election night? Trump wins a landslide. This is actually a prediction, by the way. This is an electoral prediction. You go on Let's Talk Elections YouTube channel. You can find him there. So election night, Trump sweeps the board. Then the postal votes start coming in. And 1 day passed, 2 days passed, 3 days passed, 4 days passed. And each time, Biden's vote is growing stronger and stronger, because the larger part of people who postal vote will vote Democrat. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a possibility that the right will be causing some violence? Because at this point, you have Joe Biden stopping the country, holding on and refusing to admit defeat. Do you think there's a possibility of electoral violence there?
Absolutely. Yeah. 100%. Because so many people would just assume that it was rigged if Trump is winning on election day, and then the votes come in, and Biden takes the lead in critical states and tips him over the line in terms of the electoral vote.
So, and it's the atmosphere, isn't it? It's not this on its own, because in normal times you could possibly say, okay, increased postal votes, we got to wait a bit longer. Like, let's calm down, guys. But it's this atmosphere we've seen for the entirety of 2020, where you have the left wing openly assaulting people on the streets, burning down shops, looting shops, attacking freedom of speech at every possible opportunity. They're desperate to get their candidate into the White House. And this is the thing that will drive people to violence on election day, if it does come from the right.
Sure. I think another issue as well is the actual people, like you said, Republicans are going to be more likely to vote on election day in a ballot box or vote in person. Maybe they're going to do early voting, whatever it is. But certainly I think the majority of people will probably be voting in a ballot box on the election day. So there will be, I think, a scenario where, I mean, the protest will probably still be going on to some degree by then, right? So if you want to go and vote in person as a Republican, are you not going to be concerned about the potential of BLM protesters or Antifa or whoever surrounding ballot boxes and surrounding areas where you can vote, blocking off access?
Absolutely.
Because the local law enforcement or the governors and the mayors in these areas don't even take action. Exactly, they've not taken action now. So why would they take action on election day? I don't believe that they would. I think they'd allow it to happen.
And this isn't just a wild scenario. This is the most likely scenario. If you believe that smashing a shop window of a small business and burning it to the ground after you help yourself its belongings helps you fight racism, then you logically believe that standing in front of a polling box and enforcing that everyone votes for the candidate you want to vote is fighting racism, and therefore it's justified. It's for these people with their radical ideology, it's all part of the greater good.
Exactly.
Serious consideration.
This is why we call Antifa fascists themselves, and this is why we laugh when the Democrats call Trump a Nazi, because they show more of these extremist tendencies than the right wing does. They're more. It's much easier as a left wing voter, someone who really supports progressive policies and absolutely hates Donald Trump and genuinely believes that this man is, the next Hitler, and he's taken control of the state, and he's now just enacting whatever law he wants at his own will, without passing any kind of bills or anything through the House or through Congress. If you genuinely believe all of these things, it's going to be much easier for you to justify these actions and say, well, no, because we're fighting fascism here by blocking these people from voting at the ballot box on election day. It's far, far easier for them to justify that. And
basically self-indoctrination.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just the absolute classic idiom of the road. I've forgotten it now. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Exactly. This is basically sums up large elements of the left wing right now, particularly the far left when it comes to Antifa and these kind of people. They genuinely believe that what they're doing is the right thing.
And that's, unless you have anything else to add, I think that's a good stopping point. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, and Antifa, they show us hell going to hell. So thank you again, guys, for listening. Please do again consider subscribing if you want to support us, liking if you do like the video, and commenting to help us build a community. Thanks. Until next time.